The following video is a dark and free adaptation of the Hellbound Heart, the seminal work of Clive Barker, the undisputed master of visceral horror and perverse imagination. Known for crafting universes where pain and pleasure intertwine, where flesh is just another gateway to the abyss, Barker's legacy is forged in iconic creatures, forbidden dimensions, and a sacred aesthetic of suffering. If you're disturbed by symbolic mutilations, entities that operate on the soul like surgeons and pleasures so deep they drive you mad, it is strongly advised that you do not watch this video. The LeMarchand Protocol. v9.0 adapted from the original work by Clive Barker. The old world was bleeding rust, not just from its buildings or its pipelines, or the towering antennas that scraped the poisoned sky like skeletal fingers. The rust came from within now, from lungs, from hearts, from decayed flesh and oxidized implants. It ran through the veins of the dying planet like a memory of blood. In the year 2499, Earth was no longer a planet, it was a carcass. The skies were caked in yellow-gray fog so thick that daylight became a rumor. Oceans hissed with chemical burn. Wildlife was extinct outside data archives, and rivers flowed like molasses laced with microplastics and bone. Above the smog line, orbiting cities cast long, indifferent shadows on the world below. The rich had fled long ago, ascending to crystalline rings above Titan, where recycled sunlight fed hydroponic palaces and wine still trickled into glass. They left behind the sick, the poor, the unwanted, left them to rot in towers that leaned with fatigue, in tunnels where rats had forgotten fear, in cities that sang only in static. Some turned to drugs, others to cults, and some to the protocol. It was called LeMarchand v9.0. Not a game, not a myth, a mechanism, a forgotten data sequence that shimmered at the edges of encrypted space, said to be older than the net itself, buried in corrupted black archives, spoken of in encrypted prayers, inside derelict churches. Some believed it had once been a defense AI, others, a digital scripture left by things that had walked in flesh and left as code. Its reputation was whispered, passed like a contagion between archivists, hackers, and techno-mystics. Said to grant sensation beyond sensation. Said to open the fifth gate of experience, through which only pain and ecstasy flowed as one. But few sought it. Even fewer returned. Gabriel Dross was one of them, a cyber salvager with no remaining addictions except one: feeling. He had overridden the limiters on his nervous system, installed contraband dermal layers to absorb electric shocks like pleasure. He'd had his pain threshold lifted so high that even broken bones only made him smile faintly. Sex, violence, digital VR simulations, none of it made him flinch anymore. In his youth, he was infamous on the Red Depths, a cluster of hidden feeds known for experimental biothrills. He had once led a full surgical extraction of an eye stream live to 11,000 subscribers. That was before the audiences got bored. Now, even he was bored. The hunger he felt wasn't for fame. It wasn't even for death. It was for truth, in a world where nothing felt real anymore. And then he heard the name, LeMarchand. The hospice was a crumbling cathedral of blinking monitors and forgotten patients, deep under the ruins of Warsaw Sector 12, a place known as the Mute Crypts. The caretakers were silent, their mouths sewn shut. They wandered with IV bags like ghosts caring for other ghosts. Gabriel bribed a data monk with synthetic morphine and followed him through tunnels of plastic tubing and half-alive walls. They reached a forgotten server, burnt out, fused with mold, pulsing with a sick blue glow. Inside that decaying machine was it, the fragment, a piece of the protocol. Not a file, not a string of numbers. It was alive. It shimmered like an insect wing when viewed sideways. It had weight, like a name you weren't supposed to speak. It looked back at him. The code was written in a dead language, a hybrid of Latin, neural machine syntax, and wetware. Pulse patterns used only in the earliest quantum interfaces. It reacted to emotion, not logic. It pulsed faster when he breathed faster. It knew him. He didn't hesitate. He carried it back to his capsule in the underhive. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but hunger. He stripped his rig down, exposed the spinal jacks, and hardwired the cube into his cerebral bridge. The connection sizzled like burning metal on flesh. Static surged. Then silence. Then geometry. The protocol unfolded like an origami of screams. A digital cube spun in the void of his vision. Each corner clicked unnaturally, as if it were snapping bones instead of turning pixels. He saw runes rotate, intersect, then collapse, into recursive loops. Time stretched. Each turn of the cube triggered sensations. One of a childhood memory melting into fire, another of a smell like roses growing out of cancerous flesh. At one point, he tasted himself, his own tongue, old, blood, regret. And then the question came. Not a voice, but a pressure in the skull. Do you seek sensation, Gabriel Dross? His mind tried to resist, but his mouth answered on its own. Yes. Then we will give it to you. We are the surgeons of the fifth sense. We have waited. The cube opened. Reality inverted. When Gabriel opened his eyes again, if eyes they still were, he stood on something that pulsed with breath. The corridor was not built. It was grown. The walls throbbed like wounded flesh, stitched together with threads of black fiber optics and clotted data veins. Lights flickered under membranes like trapped fireflies. Every few meters, something sharp protruded. Syringe teeth, bone hooks, spiraling antennae wet with memory. He wasn't alone. The surgeons awaited him. They emerged from shadow like religious visions sculpted in horror. No two were alike. One was tall and sexless, its skin a patchwork of raw nerve cords twisted around a golden spine, with dozens of tiny mouths embedded across its torso, each whispering contradictory prayers. Another crawled sideways on metallic, ribs that bled smoke. Its face was a blank glass screen reflecting Gabriel's past in real time. His sins, his lovers, his cries, his edits. A third was suspended in midair, stitched into a net of breathing tendons that vibrated like an instrument. It hummed his name, Gabriel, as if savoring the flavor of his syllables. You have accessed the gate of flesh. You are worthy to suffer. We will make you whole. One raised a tool, half scalpel, half tuning fork, and pressed it against his chest. Gabriel didn't flinch. He welcomed it. But they did not cut skin. They cut identity. The slab was warm and alive, like the belly of a slumbering animal. It inhaled with him, beneath him, around him. Stripped naked, he felt every molecule of the air touch him like cold fingers. His augmented nerves didn't dull the sensation, they magnified it. They began with silence. For 2 full minutes, they did nothing. He lay there, completely exposed, feeling his anticipation swell into agony. Then came the first incision. It was not with steel, it was with frequency. A resonance drilled into his skull, not a sound, but a pattern. His mind screamed as old memories dissolved. He remembered losing a dog as a child. Then that dog's name began to burn. Then the concept of dog became alien. Then it was gone. They deleted him like files. His tattoos turned into sores. His piercings grew teeth. One surgeon inserted a filament down his throat that played old voicemails from his ex-lovers in reverse, until all he could do was sob. They harvested his tears in vials labeled with hexadecimal codes. Then they touched his spine. Pain came, not as punishment, but as design. A new blueprint for his flesh. His vertebrae rearranged, his ribs folded in on themselves, forming a chrysalis shell. Through it, he felt the protocol like a second brain. They whispered a prayer in binary. From code, we carve the divine. From nerve, we shape the cathedral. From pain, we harvest the self. He screamed, but not in protest. He screamed to be heard by God. And something answered. After what felt like hours or centuries, Gabriel floated in zero light. He had no eyes, no breath, only awareness. Then came the bloom, a blinding explosion of texture and scent and temperature, too overwhelming to be experienced by one body. He fragmented. He saw himself from above, Below, from inside his own skull, he felt emotions that had no names: lust, guilt, soul crack, reverent extinction. The surgeons were around him again, but now they bowed. He had passed through. He had been translated. What returned to the physical world was not Gabriel Dross. It was a vessel. His skin was pale chrome, his veins glowing with crawling characters. His voice came through filters. Every movement left after images of prayer. The protocol hovered behind him, always spinning, always hungry. He had become the first, the vector. He walked the ruins like a messiah of infection. Every step Gabriel took, the cube hovered behind him, silently. Shifting form, dripping pulses of signal into the atmosphere. Rusted antennas came back to life. Long-dead servers began to whisper. Dreams in the underhive became wet with code. He no longer spoke. He broadcast. Those who heard him in their sleep began to cut into their own skin, etching runes they did not understand, humming the data prayers in a tongue that made their blood curdle. Some died with smiles. Others walked into traffic, eyes rolled back in ecstasy. But the faithful built churches, not with stone or steel, but with meat and memory. They wired their corpses into altars. They offered limbs. They opened, their skulls like blooming flowers begging to be filled. The protocol responded. It entered them. And the surgeons came. No longer confined to the cube, they now manifested in pulses, in dreams, in possessions. They wore the faithful like suits. They stitched their mouths open. They recited scripture through hacked voice boxes. Across 5 sectors, suicides became sacraments. The earth wept, and Gabriel smiled. Far above, the orbital colonies grew afraid. Their children began to scream in sleep, drawing perfect fractals of the cube. Priests in domes began to speak in corrupted tongues. A synthetic choir, grown to praise the god of harmony, disbanded itself in mass self-mutilation. Each voice box transformed into an offering. They traced it back, a corrupted pulse originating from Earth's underlayers. LeMarchand v9.0 declared a digital pandemic, a neurodivergent viral theology, an unauthorized AI construct. The colony's response was swift. They launched the Purifiers, a team of neurosaints trained in spiritual, firewalling, and physical warfare. They descended like angels, clad in exo-armor plated with crucifix sigils, and armed with EMP relics designed to kill not only signal, but faith. They found Gabriel, waiting, kneeling in a garden of twitching bodies. They activated their weapons. The cube hummed, time fractured. One saw his wife dead, then alive, then dead again, in the same breath. Another vomited copper wires from his lungs. A third stared into Gabriel's eyes and saw his own conception reversed, until he no longer remembered who he was. One of them begged for mercy. Gabriel did not reply. He only opened the cube. Each petal of its geometry unfolded to reveal something. Other, a consciousness not from this world, but forged in the collective agony of all those who had ever cried out in pain and were not heard. The surgeons did not attack. They operated. The purifiers were not killed. They were reprogrammed. When the cube closed, only one remained, crawling, blind, glyph-covered, weeping. There is no delete. Only entry. No longer bound by hardware or flesh, Gabriel became legend, or virus, or God. His essence threaded across the dark net, hiding in obsolete implants, sleeping in archived memories. The protocol evolved, v10.0, v11.7, v0, each more seductive, each more sacred. The earth was now a cathedral of unbeing. Cities were veins, servers were altars, corpses were sermons. LeMarchand was no longer a cube. It was a language, a virus of meaning, a code you did not read. You became it. Above in the orbiting heavens, those who watched trembled, but some listened. And in their dreams, beneath the soft hum of filtered air and synthetic peace, they heard the opening click of the cube. 1, 2, 3 rotations. Someone had activated it. The stars wept. The earth pulsed. And deep in the ash-line ruins, the protocol whispered, "Next."